Hey, welcome to The Explainer. We're diving into a super interesting idea today, a brand new way to shield against shock waves. But forget thick walls of steel. This concept uses a super engineered mix of, well, fog, cold, and sound. Pretty wild, right? So let's just jump right into the big question here. How do you stop a shock wave without a giant, solid wall? I mean, your first thought is probably something heavy, right? Thick concrete, a steel plate. But what if there was another way? A way that's lighter and way smarter. So the old way of doing things, it's all about brute force. Just build a bigger, heavier, more rigid wall. Just throw more steel or concrete at the problem. But this new idea, it takes a completely different road. It's not about mass. It's about being lightweight, reconfigurable, and frankly, a whole lot smarter. Okay, so let's be super clear about what we're talking about here. This isn't for stopping some massive building leveling explosion. Nope. The problem we're trying to solve is much smaller, much more delicate. Think about protecting really sensitive lab gear or tiny little sensors, maybe even biological samples from these sudden, sharp bursts of pressure. Like the pop from a laser creating a tiny plasma spark. And yeah, this analogy just nails it, right? Using a traditional heavy-duty blast shield for these little events, it's like using a bank vault door to protect a teacup. It's just total overkill. It's clumsy, it's way too much, and it's not designed for that kind of delicate work. You need something with a bit more finesse. And that is where this new idea comes in. It's called the local pressure curtain, or LPC for short. And it's exactly what it sounds like, a shield. But it's not made of steel or concrete. It's a theoretical concept for a shield made out of a really precisely controlled curtain of fluid. So let's break down what this local pressure curtain actually is. At its core, it's a theoretical, multi-layer, curtain that uses a combo of fog, cold, and sound. Its main job? Not to stop a massive blast, but to just soften those smaller, modest pressure events. We're talking 1 to 10 kilopascals to keep things like lab sensors safe. And the really big deal here is that it's designed to be lightweight and totally reconfigurable. Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting. The secret sauce of the LPC is how these 3 different layers work in concert. It's kind of like a recipe, right? Each part has a very specific job to do. All right, layer 1, droplet inertia. This is basically a super dense fog. Imagine a line of tiny jets creating this thick sheet of micron-scale water droplets. Now, when that pressure wave comes roaring in and hits this sheet, all those little droplets together have a surprising amount of mass. They act like a big soft cushion, taking that initial punch and spreading out the force. Okay, now for layer 2, thermal conditioning. This one is really interesting because its role isn't what you'd first think. It's a pre-cooled veil of air that keeps the whole fog system right around freezing, near 0 Celsius. Now, your first instinct might be, oh, it absorbs energy by melting ice. But the paper is really upfront about this. On the super fast timescale of a shockwave, that's not really what's happening. Its actual job is much more subtle. It helps hold the fog structure together and lets the system recover after it gets hit. And you've got to love that kind of scientific honesty, right? They're not overhyping it. And now for layer 3. And honestly, this is the really clever bit. This layer uses ultrasound, sound at a frequency we can't hear, like 20 to 40 kilohertz, to create a field of tiny bubbles inside the fog. Now, why bubbles? Because a bubbly mixture messes with how sound travels. It creates what's called an acoustic mismatch. So when that pressure wave, which is a sound wave really, hits this bubbly boundary, a big chunk of it just bounces off. It gets reflected and scattered away. It's basically an acoustic mirror. So cool. Okay, I know what you're thinking. Fog, cold, sound. This sounds like something straight out of science fiction, like a force field. But, and this is super important, the paper is very, very clear about grounding this in reality. This is not a magical stop-anything shield. It's a very specific tool with very honest and, critically, falsifiable limits. You can actually test it to see if it works as claimed. So what are we actually talking about in terms of performance? This is the key number right here. The target is a 20 to 40% reduction in peak overpressure. So let's be clear. This is about softening the blow, not stopping it completely. The goal isn't to create an impenetrable barrier. It's to take the edge off that pressure wave just enough so the delicate stuff behind it survives. And this table just lays it all out, crystal clear. What's in scope? Protecting lab sensors, testing on micro-impact surrogates, dealing with those near-field acoustic bursts. What is it absolutely not for? Yeah, Don't expect it to stop weapons-scale blasts or super sharp shocks or to protect a large area. And honestly, defining what a technology isn't designed to do is sometimes even more important than saying what it is for. It sets realistic expectations.
Look, a cool idea on paper is one thing, but the big question is always, does it actually work? And what's great is that the authors don't just leave it as a theory. They lay out a really clear step-by-step plan to see if this concept can actually hold up in the real world.
And here's the plan. They call it a 90-day challenge. You start small, right? Day 30, you're on a bench with a shock tube. By day 60, you're testing it against a real laser plasma front. Then, day 75, you're using a phantom to see if it can protect something that mimics biological tissue. And finally, on day 90, you do a very careful, small-scale field test. You see how that works? It's this beautiful, logical progression, building confidence in the idea every step of the way. And this quote from the paper, it just perfectly captures the spirit of the whole thing. They're not hiding this away in some secret lab. The goal is to put the idea out in the open, with a framework that's honest and can be tested or even proven wrong by anyone. And that is exactly how good science is supposed to work. It's about collaboration and testing ideas out in the open. So, with all that said, where does a technology like the local pressure curtain actually fit in? You've got everything from simple water sprays to massive steel walls. So where's its sweet spot? It's all about finding that very specific niche. And this chart does a great job of showing exactly where that niche is. Way over on one end, you have rigid shields. They give you like 90% attenuation. Awesome, but heavy. Way on the other end, a simple water curtain might only give you 15%. The LPC is aiming for that sweet spot right in the middle, around 35%. It's way better than a simple spray, and it doesn't have the downside of sacrificial foam, which is basically one and done. The whole idea is to trade that brute force for something that's reusable, tunable, and just more elegant. And really, that's the key takeaway right there. The local pressure curtain isn't trying to win a strongman competition. It's not about being the toughest shield on the block. It's all about being the smartest shield for a very specific job, focusing on things that brute force solutions can't offer: reusability, being lightweight, and being able to tune its performance on the fly. And that really leaves us with a provocative question to chew on, doesn't it? For centuries, we've thought that strong means hard, rigid, solid. But what if that's not the whole story? This whole concept makes you wonder, what if the most effective, most advanced shields of the future aren't hard at all? What if they're soft, adaptable, and smart?